Welcome to the Marketplace Midland podcast, where we highlight a monthly speaker that shares helpful tools for all of us to integrate timeless biblical principles into our modern businesses.
All right, good discussion. Like when I hear such passionate conversation happening from our tables, we've got some tough questions to work through today. And when Scott wraps up, if you haven't gotten done with those questions, at least grab the last one before you flip over the page. And then what Taylor introduced to us several months ago when Taylor Nunez came and spoke, we've got a passage from John 17 on the back. And we're going to work a little bit through our Discovery Bible Study method as well and kind of see what Jesus has to say about this subject matter of our worldview being in the world, not of the world necessarily. So let me introduce to you our speaker today. His name's Scott Olson. Scott's the CEO of an organization, a global organization called One Collective. And can I get down? You guys mind if I don't stand up here? Don't feel safe up there with my walking tendencies. Scott's the CEO of a great organization called One Collective that our family has partnered with for a number of years. But what I want to tell you about Scott, you can read about his bio online and try to track him down and know all the nuts and bolts about that. What I really want to tell you is this. Scott, whether he knows it or not, has the wildcatter spirit. And what I mean by that is that the way their organization works, it requires them to be wildcatters. They're gritty, they're entrepreneurial, they're highly adaptable, they're resilient in that they have lots of elasticity. And Scott has the distinct privilege of leading a team of leaders every single day all around the world. And today what he's going to come share with us is a part of his story, his journey with Jesus, as he calls it. But I've had the distinct privilege of getting to be on that adventure with him since 2018. And it's taken some really wild and crazy turns. It started with a really insane mission that we were looking at going to achieve. That ultimately it didn't blow up in our face, but it just didn't work out. But it was really, really wildcatter-esque in that we had no well control. We didn't have any rules by which to operate in north central Somalia, and I'll just let your imagination run from there. But what I want to tell you is this guy's one of us. Even though he lives in Chicago, even though he's from Western New York, he's one of us. And not only is he one of us, but this guy is insanely in love with Jesus Christ as King. And so you guys join me in giving Scott a round of applause as he comes to visit with us today.
For me, I know you would expect a speaker to get up and say this, but it is a beautiful privilege for me to get to be here with a bunch of guys that my friend Jared loves and believes in and trusts, and it's just so great. He asked me if I would come and share my testimony, and I kind of have chosen over the years to talk about my Jesus journey. I call it my Jesus journey. And when we're working with people and trying to get them engaged in what One Collective is doing around the world, I often use that term, come on a Jesus journey with us, because that's what this is all about. I know some of you have looked at our website, and I'm not here to promote One Collective, not one bit. I want to talk about Jesus and what he's done for me. But just to give you clarity, because some of you are trying to figure out, you looked at our website and you're trying to figure out what box do we put One Collective in, or what box do we take them out of? And we are a little different. And I honestly like that you can't figure what box to put us in or to take us out of. I've been doing this international ministry among the poor and this whole Jesus thing for about, if I say this, I feel so stinking old, but 43 years, so it's a long time. I know you thought I was more like in my early 40s, but it's been a while. And what I know is that this thing that I've lived through, watching international ministry take place, watching it happen, watching missions unfold, there were some really bumpy roads in the last 20, 25 years. And I think I can help you understand One Collective really fast with an illustration. So the classic missionary sending agency, when they go do their thing, historically has been primarily about souls. How do we get people into heaven? It's about evangelism. So if you think of traditional missions, it's about evangelism. But what happened is the compassion and justice folks came along, and they were a reaction to the fact that the mission folks weren't doing squat about the actual pain and suffering that people were dealing with. And so they birthed this compassion justice movement. Well, it was probably an okay idea until they all started scrapping and hating each other and fighting over which was more important, evangelism or caring for the needs of the hurting people in our world. When I went to this organization that I now lead, it was about to go under. It was a dying, I would classify it as a dying missionary sending agency that could not be fixed. They were going to shut it down. They kept it alive by one vote. And what happened was there was one vote, yes, let's keep it alive, and one guy stepped up with $1 million loan. And then they looked for a crazy person who would come and lead this whole thing and rebuild it, and that would be me. So I got there and basically had to blow this thing up and restart it. Well, here's what was interesting. There were two very formational things for me that were happening with this task that I was given. One was asking Jesus, Lord, how do I rebuild something that truly reflects you in our world today? That was the first one. And so me and another guy, we just kept reading the Gospels and trying to really understand the heart of Jesus. The second thing was, it was so deeply burned into my heart, the pain of watching mission organizations fight with compassion people, and compassion people arguing with the missionary folks about which was more important. Where we landed, and here's the box. So wherever you want this box to be, this is the box. When we started to figure out how to go forward, we landed on this idea that Jesus loves the world so much that we are to do both at the same time. It's not one or the other. It's not evangelism only, and it's not compassion only. And could I suggest it's not one to get the other? You don't do acts of kindness so that you can tell people about Jesus. If we do that, that's bad, what we would call in my business, bad missiology. So we built our whole reputation, our whole future on this idea that we're going to build this thing around Jesus and his love for the world. And so if you're trying to figure this out, I would call that holistic. We're highly collaborative. We bring people together. We go into communities around the world and we try to figure out how to get people to work together in a way that will get more done. And our models are sustainable, and we're always working at that. So if you haven't looked at our website, or our website confused you, go back and look at it again, and I think you'll get the gist of it. So that's that. So I grew up in a place in Western New York called Jamestown. I was telling one of the guys when I was going around trying to meet everybody, like, it's dangerous to be from New York and to go in Texas. You know, that's kind of a, you know, I really wanted to be a little bit more undercover on that, but it's out. So don't hold that with me, because apparently I'm a wildcatter or something cool down here. So this town I grew up in was about 60,000 people. By the way, it's the only claim to fame of Jamestown, New York, is it's the hometown of Lucille Ball. So if you know Lucy and you love Lucy, then that's where she was from. Other than that, there weren't a lot of things going. So when I was a kid, I'm a jazz musician. You may have picked that up or heard about that. I play the saxophone. And I didn't grow up in a Christian home. There was no church around me anywhere. I mean, just my family. My dad was an alcoholic. He died of cirrhosis of the liver at 45. When I was 18, my mom was a perfectionist in the uttermost way you could imagine. I remember wanting to mow the lawn and, you know, kind of show that I'm a man. I went and mowed the lawn one day, and I was so proud of the work I'd done. It was the first time. And I was putting the lawnmower away, and she came up and said, wait. She wanted to inspect my work. My mom laid down in the middle of the backyard to look at all of the blades of grass to see if I'd missed any. This is what my brother and I grew up with. I'm not looking for pity. I'm just telling you, it was not a great place to grow up. So I had that. There's no church around us that we're going to, or we don't know anything about Jesus and all those kind of things. But I played the saxophone. And so the saxophone for me was this thing that gave me value and worth and a sense of maybe even being loved at times and that kind of stuff. And so when I was young, my band director gave my name to a band of guys that played old people's music. I like to just call it old geezer music. And my buddies and I, we just, we thought we should try to figure out how to tap into this. Because see, what was happening is I'd get called in and sit in with these guys and play a gig. And at the end of the night, the old guys, I mean, they were in their 40s for sure. These old guys, they would go around and pass out $100 bills to each other, and they'd give me a 20. And I saw this, and I knew what was going on. And I'm the guy playing all the lead solo parts, and they're getting rich, and I'm getting a little bit. Well, pretty good for a 13-year-old. But so at some point, my friends and I had three friends that we were all pretty darn good at our instruments for our age. So we said, why don't we learn all the old folks' music and see if we can make a lot of money? So we started learning. Some of you are going to know these Stardust and Misty and all of the Satin Doll. We could play all of those songs. And what happened was, in my little town of 60,000 people, we became famous. Everybody knew who we were. We were on radio, we were on television, we were in the newspapers, our pictures were everywhere. We were playing weddings, we were playing clubs, we were playing all over Western New York. And we literally, at this very young age, in a very small world, felt famous. We would sign autographs, on the street, and we were like 14 and 15, it was crazy. So we ended up, playing together from 13, 14, 15. We played all the way through from junior high into high school. And so that was kind of the life that I grew up in. So my first point maybe there is, I want you to know as I tell my story, everybody knew who I was. I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you, everybody knew who I was because of this music thing. So graduated from high school. I had the chance to go to a music school in Boston called Berklee, which I didn't go to because life on the road seemed a whole lot more fun at 18 than going to college at the time. So I went on the road, played with our band, and we just went all over the country. And we played 6 nights a week. We made a ton of money. We got into some trouble doing things that musicians have a tendency to fall into. Not proud of any of that, but it's part of the Jesus journey. So at some point in this whole thing, I had fallen in love with my wife Jill, who was back in New York while I was traveling all over the world. And we'd known each other since kindergarten, so we knew each other really, really well. And I think we knew forever that we were going to be married someday. But the problem was, I was only coming back home about 1 week out of every 52. So it wasn't a really great relationship. So we kind of put the love life on the front burner and set a date and decided to get married and did. And the week before the wedding, she's up in New York and I'm down in Florida playing. And I think everything is cool. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to get married next week and it's going to be great. And she's going to go on the road with me and life is going to be good. And what happened was, she calls me a week before the wedding and she says, I got to tell you something. I said, what? It was like something really bad is the way it sounded. She goes, I went to a crusade and gave my life to Jesus. And I was like, awesome. That's great. I think she was expecting me to be like freaked out by that, but this is America. In the 70s, this is America. Like, we're all Christians, right? Christmas and Easter, we're all in this boat with Jesus, right? And the answer to that is, well, not exactly. So the problem now was the pastor wanted to meet me face to face and interview me to find out if I was a believer. So I fly up to New York. It's like, and honest, guys, I'm just as innocent when I tell this story as you could believe. Because he asked me, are you a Christian? I'm like, heck yeah. And he's like, well, is there any proof of that? I said, I know what Easter is all about, and I know what Christmas is all about, and I'm good with it. And he's like, okay, so he did the wedding. And we get married, and life on the road was terrible. The first gig that I took her on was an 8-hour trip from New York, and she cried for 8 hours the whole time, missing her mom. And I'm like, what the heck have I gotten myself into? This was, not exactly the plan. So we did it for a while. I traveled for a while. She traveled some with me, but along the way, we wound up buying a house back in New York as a place where we could always go to. And she was there a bit more with me. I had started playing more music locally, and it seemed to be working out all right. Well, one day, she wants me to go to church with her. And what I loved about her in those days is she never nagged me about going to church. I never felt shamed or guilted into going. So one day she just very kindly and innocently asked me if I wanted to go to church. And I said, okay. So I go to church. It is literally my first time in an evangelical church. It's probably my first time in a church. And how many of you grew up in church? Okay, so maybe I should have said, how many of you didn't grow up in church beside me? Okay, these people are weird, right? Like these church people, they were weird. They were so weird. Here's my first day. True story. So always keep in the back of your mind, everybody knows who Scott Olson is in the city of Jamestown. Okay? So I go into church that particular day, and the first thing that happened were it felt like an army of little blue-haired ladies coming at me. And I could feel them coming, and I was not sure what to do with that exactly. And they're coming, and they're coming. And then one by one, they would walk up to me. Now watch this. And they would say, just wanted to let you know I've been praying for you. Okay, have you ever seen an old lady do that? I've been praying for you. There's more to that than a little head nod. I've been praying for you. So I turn to Jill. I say, what the heck is that? Like, I've been praying for you. And she says, well, they think you're like a pagan, and they've been praying for your soul. I'm like, am I a pagan? Like, I believe in Easter and Christmas, right? Am I a pagan? She says, yeah, I think kinda, maybe by their standards, you sort of are. So I move on, and what I'm about to tell you happens in like a 30-minute period before the church service even starts, okay? So they're the first connection. The next few steps I take is Deacon Larry. Deacon Larry, I wish I had a picture of him. Deacon Larry wore a 3-piece suit, which was very cool at the time. And he had the classic smile, the used car look. I mean, he was just Mr. Encouragement, Mr. Brother, love to have you here, and so he's doing this to me. And he says, I'm Larry, and I'm the head deacon here, and I'm so glad you're in church today, Scott. And he says, are you aware that you're going to be burning in hell someday? I said, I really did never consider that, Larry. He says, yes, your lifestyle, your music, you're far from Christ, you're going to burn in hell. I'm like, okay, well, thanks for telling me that. I appreciate that. So the next one, feet away, is Carol Van Stee. She is the head of the music committee. She's the head of the music committee. I don't know if churches still do music committees, but that was a thing back in the day. The music committee was very powerful because they controlled who was on and off the stage doing the music. And she comes up to me, and she's smiling too. You know, that's the funny thing about all of you Christians. You smile a lot, but you're not really always saying the coolest things, you know. So Carol comes up, and she said, I'm Carol Van Stee, and she said, I'm in charge of the music committee. She said, I know that you're wanting to play your saxophone in this church. And she said, I want to tell you right up front, that's not going to happen. The saxophone is an evil instrument, and to play it in this church would defile God and defile this church and defile this building, and it will not bring glory to God. So you will not be playing your saxophone in this church. So here's the thing. My whole goal and dream in life was to play my saxophone in a church one day. No, that was not my whole goal. That's where you're supposed to really laugh, because that was not my goal, ever. The last thought on my mind was, boy, I'd like to play in this place. I've been playing in front of hundreds of thousands of people my whole life up until this point. Big, big crowds. And I want to play. I don't even know any Christian music. So this is my first day. I met one more person. His name was Mike. He was different. He was a little younger. He wasn't wearing a three-piece suit. I definitely remember that. He was wearing a jacket, but he had a little, like loosened tie thing going. And I thought, yes, this guy's a little bit better than the rest. So we started to have this conversation. I find out that Mike is building the house 3 doors down from me. I kept wondering who's building this house. And so we start to talk, and we're just having a great time, and I'm like, I like this guy. I really like this guy. So I said the words that will forever cause my family to laugh. I said, can I help you build your house? I'm the guy that you don't want touching a hammer and a nail, okay? You just don't want that happening. That's not me. But I go down there, and we start to become friends, and we start to play racquetball together, and we start to do this, all of this kind of neat stuff. And I really feel like we're becoming friends. I found out he was the youth pastor at this church. And it's like, okay, something's very different, because he's not talking about hell. He's not actually even talking about heaven yet, but he's actually interested in my life. So this becomes a really awesome relationship. And it's my first Christian friend, but it seems like I'm actually becoming friends with a person who really cares, a person who really seems to like me too. I didn't feel, I wondered at one point if I'm a project. I never felt that. I just felt like he loved me. I felt like he cared about me. He was interested in my music. He was interested in my life. So what happens next is kind of interesting. One day, I went out to get in my car. So Mike lives down the hill, I'm here, and I go to get in my car, and I realize that I have 2 flat tires. Now, I don't know how it is in Texas, but I know up north, where they give us 1 spare. So getting two flats is not supposed to actually happen. So I went back in the house. I probably used some words that wouldn't be very nice. I was mad. I was really mad. And I pouted for a couple hours. At some point, I went out to deal with it. I opened the front door. I looked out into my driveway. And there was Mike, who had taken both of the tires off of my car, taken them to a repair shop, gotten both of them fixed, and he was now putting the second one, the last one, back on my car. And I just remember saying, I was at the door, and I looked, and I thought, like, who does this? Who does this? So I went outside and I said, Mike, I don't know what to say, man. Thank you for doing this. And I said, can you tell me why? Why did you do this? There was a look on his face that was so humble, so lacking of any form of pride that he couldn't even really look at me. He just kind of looks down and he says, well, I'm trying to be a follower of Jesus, and I think this is the kind of stuff he would do. I said, Mike, this is what I want. This is what I've been looking for. I grew up on the legend of Robin Hood. He was my superhero when I was a kid. You know, and everybody says, oh, you just like the rob from the rich, give to the poor thing. No. In the Errol Flynn version of Robin Hood, he was a nobleman who stepped away from his nobility and he aligned himself with the poor and oppressed. And I was saying that to Mike. I said, that sounds like what Jesus has done for us. He stepped aside, stepped away from his nobility, and he aligned himself with the likes of me, with the likes of us. Guys, it just changed everything for me. It changed everything. It changed the direction of my life from that moment. Craziest thing, I quit the music business that day. I walked away. I said to myself, I cannot be out there trying to figure out what it looks like to follow Jesus while at the same time living out in bars and clubs and doing this. I just couldn't. That's not for everybody, guys. I would never say that to other music, but for me, I couldn't do both. So I quit, and now I'm unemployed. That was a wonderful nighttime conversation with my wife. You don't play music anymore? I said, well, I think I might still play music, but I just don't make my living at it. So, slight panic, but I felt that it was the right thing for me. So, the next day, the phone rings. It's a local church. It's a pastor. He says, hey, I heard you became a Christian. I'm telling you, you guys got this crazy network of stuff going. You know everything that's going on about each other and all this. And here I am in my little town of 60,000. He goes, I heard you became a Christian. I'm like, nobody hardly knows this. How do you know it? Well, he wanted me to come. He wanted me to come to his church that Sunday, and he wanted me to play some Christian music and share my testimony. Hey, Mike, it's Scott. So the darndest thing just happened. A pastor called me, and he wants me to come to his church and play Christian music on Sunday, and he wants me to share my testimony. I would love to swear right now and tell you exactly what I said to him, but I'm not going to do that. I said, what the heck is a testimony? I had no idea. So he explained to me what a testimony was. And I said, how do I find Christian music? You know, like, what do I do there? He said, there's a Christian bookstore. You go there. They've got these little tapes that you can pop in the cassette thing and you can play to the background music. I said, okay. So I went and I was talking to a lady that ran the bookstore, and I said, I need some Christians. This is so funny. I never thought of this. It's a Christian bookstore with Christian music. I said, I need to find some Christian music. And that's funny to me. So she said, what do you need it for? I said, well, I need to play in a church on Sunday. And I said, I don't really know anything about Christian music. So she said, well, I'm sure you've heard of Amazing Grace. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard of that one. So she gets it out for me, and she says, you know what this song is about? And I said, no, but I always wondered why she was so amazing. You know, like, I thought Grace was a person, a woman. I really did. I'm not kidding. This is how, there are others in your community just like me that don't have a clue about this stuff, okay? It's for real. So I learned a few songs, and then I went to this church. I put together some sentences that could become a testimony. And then this thing happened that caught me off guard. At the end of the thing, they do this thing. You guys aren't going to believe this. This is really pretty cool. but they do this thing in churches called love offerings. You ever heard of those? Yeah, like I hadn't. So they come up to me and they've got well, in the bar business, they usually pass the hat, but you have plates that are nice and shiny and cute, or not cute, but beautiful and stuff like that. So I think it was like $50 some, and I look at Jill and I'm like, we're gonna be fine. We're like rich. And so, we got this $50, we go, and every day, another church called, and another church called, and another church called. And the next thing I know, I'm traveling all over the United States, sharing my testimony, playing music, while Pastor Mike, by the way, I said he was a pastor, right? But Pastor Mike is discipling me all week long, like intense 3 years of investing in my life. And then I would go out on the weekends. So I really wasn't going to church at that time. For 3 years, I just spent on the road playing music in churches. And it was like this fast forward rocket ship for my life with Jesus. And it's very unconventional. I realize that, but it was my story. Jared, how much time do I have?
15.
Okay. So what happened next was this whole Christian music traveling thing really got me noticed in a lot of places. And I started, after these 3 years of playing music, I was in so many different types of churches, different denominations, and all kinds of things. And at some point, the phone calls I got started to change. And they were asking me if I would come and be their youth pastor. I can barely say that with a straight face. You want me to be your youth pastor? And I would just kind of laugh and say, no, thank you, that's very kind, but I'm not going to be your youth pastor. So after about 6 of these kind of phone calls, a church calls up in New Brunswick, Canada, and they said, we know, we're going to ask you to be our youth pastor, and you're going to be our youth pastor. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You are. They said, we know you want to say no, but we're 30 minutes from a Bible college. We've never had a youth pastor. You've never been a youth pastor. Let's get together and figure this out, and we'll pay for college for you. So I'm like, Jill, what do we do? And so we decided to make the trek up there and see what this would all be like. And by the way, Mike was all along telling me that at some point God was going to lead me into some type of full-time ministry. And so we go to New Brunswick, go through this interview process. You guys might get a kick out of this if you're old enough, that one of the questions that they asked me in the interview is what I thought of cell ministry. For those of you that don't know that term, that meant, that kind of was the precursor to home groups and small groups and those kind of things. Was cell ministry. They were called cells for a while. And one guy asked me what I thought of cell ministry. I said, "Oh, I'm all for it. I think prisoners deserve a chance." It's like you got to start asking yourself, how did this guy ever make it to be a CEO of a sizable organization that's changing the world? I ask myself that sometimes. But I guess that's the story of Jesus in each of our lives, isn't it? Yeah. So let me see if I can wrap this up. This position as a youth pastor put inside of me a desire and a love for short-term missions and taking teens on short-term mission trips. And I apparently did it well, and I got noticed by my denomination. And they said, eventually, again, I'm always being asked to do things before I think I'm ready to do things. And they asked me if I would come to Indianapolis, Indiana, and be in charge of short-term youth ministry, short-term mission trips for teens. And I said to Jill, I think missions is our future. I really, really feel it is. And so this was a really long time ago. But what happened was, guys, it put me into a denomination that was, are you guys familiar with the term holiness? Holiness denomination. So I was in a holiness church. Holiness church, if you don't know, is just, they would believe very strongly that you you can, through the Holy Spirit, live a life that's sinless here on earth. It's not a cult. It's actually a thing, and there's a lot. There's the Wesleyans and the Methodists and the Free Methodists and Nazarenes and lots of good people. I got so good at being a Christian that it kept moving me up this ladder within my denomination. And they kept giving me more than I thought I could do. And what happened was, at some point in my journey, you guys, I was now wearing the three-piece suit back in the day. I was now acting like a guy who knew all of the right church lingo and the right things to say and the right things to do. And I'm hanging around with a bunch of theologians who work for a denomination, and I am becoming one of them. At some point, and that's not a bad thing, but at some point along the way, I started to realize that I had become, maybe 10 years into this, a professional paid Christian. And that my worth was somehow tied up in how good I could do holiness and how well I could do Christianity. And it was like the frog in the kettle. It was just happening to me, and I didn't really know it. And then something happened, and it actually coincides with me going to work at One Collective. I left my denominational role. I was the number 2 guy in the missions part of our denomination. I'd been doing that for years now, and I was now asked to go start something that wasn't tied to my denomination. And it was a very good time for me, because I was able to step aside from the structure of working for a denomination where you are always being watched, where you are always having to be perfect or feel perfect. And now I am here leading this organization that's broken, and they want me to fix it. And now I'm trying to figure out, Lord, this seems like my chance to build something great that reflects you, that takes me back to the Jesus that Pastor Mike and I used to talk about in the early days. And it did. And so as we started to build One Collective into what it is today, I'm going to tell you a secret. I tell all our new people when they come on board, I'm going to tell you a secret. The journey of One Collective from being what it was to what it is today is very much my own journey. What would it look like to be an organization, to be a person who with humility can barely look you in the face and they say, well, I'm trying to be a follower of Jesus, and I think this is the kind of stuff he would do. I'm really proud of what One Collective is, what it's become. I'm proud of our people. Everybody that joins, and we talk about humility. We talk about Jesus. Everything is built on and based around the life and teachings of Jesus. You know, we're all shipped. The question you were asked was about your worldview. And like, you guys have all seen this diagram before, but we're all on a journey, and we're with people, and we feel pretty good about we're all going the same direction. But every once in a while, let's pretend this is our community of other Jesus followers. But every once in a while, somebody is part of that group and it's going this way. That's easy to spot, right? If this was a leadership lesson, you know something's off right here. If that's a human lesson, we know something's a little off. But here was the trick. Sometimes some people are like this. I think that as we walk this journey with Jesus and we talk about worldview, I think that there are good people who have influenced us. By the way, my answers to the questions about worldview is a worldview, and it's in your own mission statement for this gathering of you guys. Worldview is, let's just say, it's how you see the world. The bigger question is, how do you see the world? How do you see the world? Because it's institutions that have pretty much helped us to figure out what a worldview is, but institutions are made up of people. My first experience with Christianity was through Deacon Larry, the blue-haired ladies, Carol Van Stee, who all thought I was basically not cool enough to be in the club. I never have had a grudge or any anger against them, because I think that there are good people who influence us. I think all of us have bad people who have hurt us or someone we love in the past. But I call these people the well-intentioned people. They're the ones who only are doing what somebody showed them to do, what somebody taught. Carol, when she told me that saxophone is an evil instrument, that did not come from her. That came from somewhere in her lineage of being discipled and figuring out what Christianity looks like. Larry telling me that I'm going to burn in hell, I believe with all of my heart that he did that with a pure heart and the best of intentions. I don't judge any of them. I'm just saying, if we're going to follow Jesus, if we're going to really follow the Jesus of the Bible that we claim to love and believe in, then we have to allow him to chip away at our worldview so that it can come into alignment with the Jesus of the Bible. I think I'll leave you guys hanging right there. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Marketplace Midland podcast. Please join us next month with speaker Scott Olson, CEO of One Collective.